have some information about doubts about the evolutionary interpretation of the fossil record, and you give three things, and one of them here is the rarity of transitional forms. Other one is fossil groups do not seem to occur in the order that evolutionary theory predicts, and the other one would be the sudden appearance of many disparate groups in the fossil record.
Yeah, so the first point concerns the rarity of transitional forms. So transitional forms in evolutionary theory are fossil organisms or groups of organisms that would stand morphologically between the groups that are thought to be ancestral and the groups that are thought to be descendant. So
Right.
they would be intermediate
Right.
in morphology. And we'd also expect them obviously to fall in the fossil record in an intermediate position
Right.
between the ancestral and descendant groups. And transitional forms ought to be common, because every group must have arisen by,
Descent with modification.
by a whole succession of transitional forms, if evolutionary theory is correct.
Yeah.
As it happens, transitional forms are relatively rare. I mean, there are some classic examples that get sort of discussed in the textbooks. They seem to be particularly rare in the groups that are that have the best fossil records. So we're thinking particularly about shallow marine invertebrates that have a good fossil record. Okay. Transitional forms seem to be particularly absent in those groups, and the relative handful of examples of transitional forms that we do have, I think, can be explained in other ways. So that's one point. The second point is that the fossil groups don't seem to appear in the order that evolutionary theory predicts. And this really goes back to an unpublished study that was done some years ago by Dr. Kurt Wise, who's a creationist paleontologist.
Was his PhD from Harvard?
It was, yes, it
Okay.
was from Harvard in invertebrate paleontology.
Okay.
And what Kurt did was he constructed evolutionary trees, trees of relationship for a large number of higher taxonomic groups based on morphology.
Okay.
So he's looking there at the form of the organism. So it's completely independent
Right.
from the fossil record. From those evolutionary trees, you can look at the order of branching. You can look at the order in which different groups branch along the evolutionary tree, and predict, therefore, the order in which those groups ought to appear in the fossil record,
Right.
if that branching pattern reflects the order in which those groups evolved. And then what he did was he did a statistical analysis where he then compared the order of branching with the actual order of appearances
In the fossil record.
established from the fossil record,
Right.
and found that in 95% of the 144 examples that he looked at, there was no statistically significant correlation between the predicted order of appearance and the actual order of appearance.
Ouch.
So again, that sort of suggests that in most cases, whatever the fossil order is, it's not well explained by evolutionary theory.
Right.
And then the third point concerns the Cambrian explosion, and the fact that at the first appearance of abundant animals in the fossil record, we have many disparate groups of organisms. By disparate, I mean different kinds of body plans. So we have, you might have bivalves, mollusks. You might have brachiopods. You might have echinoderms. You might have various types of worms. These are all disparate sort of body plans, and it's later in the fossil record that we then see diversity within those disparate body plans. Now that's actually the opposite of what we'd expect if evolution is true, because if evolution is true, what we ought to see is increasing diversity that ultimately gives rise to wide disparity.
Yeah.
So,
And
we
instead
ought to
you
see a
have
pattern.
wide disparity disparity appearing suddenly.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then diversity within those disparate body forms. So it seems to be, a kind the opposite really of what we'd expect if evolution was correct. So.
Right.
Thank you for listening. Credible Faith is a global missions-minded apologetics ministry with content available in 7 different languages across 7 websites: German, Russian, Italian, French, Spanish, Portuguese, and English. If you would like to support the global apologetics work of Credible Faith, go to crediblefaith.org and click on the donate icon. If you would like me to give an apologetics workshop or participate in a debate at your university, or if you would like me to give a Great Commission missions conference or apologetics conference at your church, get in touch with me through the Contact Us section of the Credible Faith website. You can also submit a request through the website to get Credible Faith's monthly email. If you are a native speaker of Russian, German, Italian, French, Spanish, or Portuguese, and if you notice that an essay from the English website is not available on the Credible Faith website for your language, feel free to get in touch with me about translating the essay, and I would read through your translated material for quality control and the desire to see content from the essay made available in your language. Thank you for listening, and have a great night.